Hi, everyone. Welcome to Doing Sociology. We're here today with a very special lecture. In fact, this is the first lecture for the Women in Society Research Collection, which is being curated by Doing Sociology. Uh, the series is aimed at fostering critical dialogue and expanding the understanding of women's lived experiences and agency with diverse social, cultural, and historical contexts. And we're trying to bring together prominent voices in the field. This collection will seek to interrogate existing narratives, highlight certain underrepresented perspectives, and inspire interdisciplinary approaches to the study of gender and society. And today's inaugural talk is by Dr. Lata Singh, and she will be talking about situating women performers in feminist historiography. I'm very grateful to Dr. Singh for taking time out and joining us today for this session. And I'm also very thankful to Dr. Gayatri Balu, who's also a friend, who's joining us all the way from Mumbai for this session. So very happy to have you both. And before I hand over the session to the moderator for today, Dr. Gayatri Balu, I'd like to very briefly tell you about Doing Sociology. Some of you might be new. So, Doing Sociology is an independent academic women led platform which is aimed at making sociology as well as other social science disciplines accessible to students across universities in India as well as outside, and also to create a platform for academic dialogue between the global north and global south, and also between the different regions as we see in India. So I'll also share the links for our different for our website and our different social media platforms on the chat box. So those of you who are new, you can go and follow us and look at our previous works. And I would also encourage young researchers to write for us. We have our guidelines on our website. And yes, now I'm going to very quickly tell you about our moderator today, Dr. Gayatri Balu, who's an assistant professor at the Advanced Center for Women's Studies, School of Development Studies, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. She holds a PhD in gender studies from Jawaharlal Nehru University with her dissertation, Mapping Transformations, a study of Velichapats in Kerala, examining gender, caste, and labor in marginalized religious practices. Previously, she served as principal project scientist at STEM the Gap. It's a project at IIT Delhi. She's senior research associate at the at the Society for Social and Economic Research in New Delhi, and young professional with the Odisha Livelihoods Mission. Her research has appeared in leading journals, including Social Scientist, Men and Masculinities, and Society and Culture in South Asia. Her paper, Masculinity and Marriage, Interrogating Possession Among Veli Chapats, Men of Northern Kerala, received the Veena Mazumdar Memorial Fund's Best Published Paper Award by the Indian Association of Women's Studies. Gayatri is also engaged in public initiatives and mentoring early career researchers. Her ongoing work explores care economies, masculinities in nursing, and faith-based labor. And now I'll invite Gayatri to take over the session and also to introduce the speaker for today, Dr. Lata Singh. So over to you, Gayatri.
Thank you, Deepali. It's an honor to introduce Dr. Lata Singh today. Dr. Lata Singh is a distinguished faculty member at the Center for Women's Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Dr. Lata's academic journey is marked by being a British Academy visiting fellow, a fellow at the Indian Institute of Advanced Studies, Shimla, and she's a UGC research awardee as well. Her extensive body of work is a testament of her deep engagement with the questions of gender and performance, which I'm sure she will go in depth today. Dr. Lata Singh's latest book, Gender in Modern India, History, Culture, Marginality, has garnered significant attention recently. She has also chronicled women's movement in India through her work, Feminist Movements in India, Issues, Debates, and Struggles, offering a very rich account of the debates and challenges shaping feminist practice in the country. So coming to today's topic and discussion, Among her many contributions, the book Raising the Curtain, Recasting Women Performance in India, which is like this book, if you all can see, it's actually a must read for students and scholars of gender and performance, I would say. This work traverses the different worlds or like different realms of the life of courtesans, colonial era actresses, performance in Tamasha, Nautanki, and Ipta, offering a very nuanced understanding of women performers in India's history. Dr. Lata Singh has also edited and contributed to a significant work, which is titled Violence and Performing Arts in India, Performances of and Violence, a collection that interrogates the politicization of aesthetics and challenges the valorization of violence as aesthetics. In fact, her very first work in this trajectory of performance is, in fact, Theatre in Colonial India, Playhouse of Power, which underscores theatre as a contested space of hegemonic and counter hegemonic struggles, situating it within the larger social and political frameworks. And on a personal note, I have had the privilege to be supervised by Dr. Lata Singh for my PhD work. So it's truly, it gives me so much of happiness to welcome Dr. Lata Singh today to give this lecture. And thank you so much for doing sociology, for giving me this opportunity to welcome Dr. Lata Singh. Over to you.
Thank you, Dipali and Gayatri. Now, both of you are my colleagues, huh? So, I was told by Vishma Pati always, for whom I wrote the book Gender in Modern India, you're working with, not working under a supervisor. You always told me. Okay, so thank you, Dipali, for persuading me, because for the past 2 years I've been avoiding giving any lecture, but it's a pleasure always, because it's also a learning process. As a scholar, we all are scholars. Let me just, I'm toying with the idea of bringing it into the feminist historiography, the women. Actually, it starts with my own personal journey. It started when I was part of the women's movement with Saheli and others also. And I wanted to bring the voice through theater. I wanted the students of Delhi University, where I was teaching, that, I didn't want to, it's like a bhashan badi. I thought, let me take up good place, engage with the students, they'll perform, they'll be questioning. While doing that with the students, undergraduate students, I came across a lot of my students now who are part of National School of Drama and other places, and good actors. They face tremendous opposition from their family. Their phone was snatched. They were not allowed to go. They were not allowed to travel to Kanpur festivals and all that. And they are actually, one of the father called me and said, "You're teaching in JNU, क्या आप बच्चों को ये सिखाना चाहते हैं? उनको ले लेके नाटक करवाना चाहते हैं?" And it also started with little bit with me, because my mother was very happy that I built up the dramatic society in Delhi University. But when I used to come back late in the night, she felt, what is this? She thought, best part is go in the morning, come by before 5. And then she actually once told me that, why don't you stay in the hotel if you're coming at 3 o'clock in the night? 4 o'clock, this is not your family. So it is actually starts with my personal journey, and I'm a historian basically, modern English, PhD with Bipin Chandra in JNU. It actually started toying with the ideas, why are the women performers still today? Why are they resisted as a profession? It's a hobby, take it up, not as a profession. We would not like to marry anybody who comes from the Hollywood actress or somebody. So that's the thing which made me rethink about the question of gender. We are trying to problematize the category of gender through caste, class, race, ethnicity, sexuality. But if you put women performer in these axes also, what I found, that middle class women looks upon the middle class actresses with suspect. Dalit women also looks upon Dalit actress, Dalit in the tamasha. They would not like to marry their, community within that, So what is so unsettling, does it further problematize the category of gender by bringing women performers? And I found them to be the most, I use this word, the most unsettling and the most public women. Most of us are in the public domain. with our profession. But what is so public about them? One of the important aspects I found was that, in fact, in other profession, there can be certain seclusion of your body and, separation. But here, what happens? Your body itself is available for heterogeneous male gaze, strange, you don't know who are your audience in Tamasha or in the proscenium or, and all those theaters. So you're revealing yourself to so many things, unlike the chaste and the good women, who are not supposed. You're also doing some of the most private, intimate scenes with the strange men. This profession involves physicality, intermingling of men and women on a performance space. And if you look at the entire literature, from European world, if you go to London, all the European world, the most of the theater spaces are in and around the place of the red light area. यहाँ भी आप चांदनी चौक के यहाँ भी आप देख लेंगे everywhere. London also I found. The first theater hall was there. Bombay, if you look at the first theater hall, it is, if you look at the formation of urbanization, urban cities, you'll find a theater hall at the prostitutes' quarter. Probably, these women were brought under the category, they were under the category of the prostitute. I mean, that I'm using the word prostitute because discourse was the prostitute, And very interestingly, I mean, if you look at the trajectory of your modern, so-called modern elite theater history of, there was a point when men were performing the role. There was an entire very interesting debate which occurred in Bengal and also in Maharashtra in the late 19th and early 20th century, because, the women should be performing women's role. And, if you look at the theater journals, the kind of debates and discussion that was happening, because some people said for the art's sake, let's women perform. But actually they said in no way the morals of women should be threatened by them going to theater, especially the married women. Because the women are able to protect their character, their entire dignity, because they are not mixing with men freely. And women do not have so much of strength. If they mix with men, they may go astray and they may not maintain their purity. This was a debate which was happening in the 19th century, late 19th, early 20th century in Maharashtra theatre journal called Rangbhumi. Shurakuleen women join performance. And how can a husband tolerate his wife doing the role of somebody else's wife? And what happens when the woman is in menstruation? It's a stage of pollution. So how can anybody touch her? So these were the debates which were taking place around the entrances of the women as an actress in this. So there's a whole, if you go to, I was looking at most of the works, there's a fuzzy boundary between women performers and prostitutes across region, across the world. Another very significant aspect is this is not like any other profession where your domesticity dovetails so well that most of us, our families encourage us to be part of, because this is something long, late, irregular, unpredictable hours of work. You're most of the time away in the evening when most of the good women are supposed to be back home. That's the time you're moving out of your house. And you may be coming at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the night. I mean, in one of my interview in Calcutta with Chitra Sen, she was one of the very towering theatre personality in Bengal, in the IPTA and the group and the political theatre in the 50s. I mean, in the 50s and 60s, when I interviewed her, she told me in Bangla, I mean, she said, when I used to come back late in the night, my neighbor would pull this, she was staying in a middle class family, neighborhood. Neighbor would take out the curtain and say, "Ishe gache." Oh, she has returned. If you look at the film, of Bhumika, which is about the first Marathi actress, Hansa Wadkar on the life. I mean, one of the scenes very powerfully depicts that when Hansa Wadkar comes back late in the night, and a co-actor comes to drop her, her husband is very, very suspicious of her. Again, this is a profession which involves traveling with the theater troupe. I mean, you are traveling with men across caste, class, religion, and forming a fictive kinships with them. So not on the basis of marriage or your blood. So in a way, this is the space which is actually looked upon suspiciously. I mean, if you look at historically also, when I was tried to look at it, you'll find in the ancient, even in the historically in the ancient villages, if you look at the habitation, you'll always find the performing community. For example, Nat community, Mar Mahar and all in Maharashtra and all, they will be actually residing at the outskirts of village. This is what Pradi Sharma of NSD once told me in the lecture, कि उनका habitation be performers were looked upon as an outcast. And very interestingly, Utpal Dutt had made a play, Tine Talwar. It is about the entry of these women into performance. And the entire discourse was that these men who enter, whoever, men and women, if they're part of the theater community, they are frivolous, they are licentious, I mean, they are immoral, they're bohemian, they are alcoholic, they're going to corrupt the society. And one of the novels which I was looking at in Bengal, one of the person gets down at Calcutta station and he asks the way to the theater hall in Bengal, in Calcutta. And he was told by the somebody there, misguided, and said, and when he reached the place, he realized he has been misguided because and it says, how can I tell this Bhadralo to go to a theater hall, I mean, this is something which is very interestingly, when I was going for interview to Maharashtra for Tamasha women, in the train, when I met some of the Maharashtrians, and I was curious to know, none of the good families of Maharashtrians have ever seen Tamasha. And they told me very categorically, ma'am, aap to bahut padhe likhe hain. You come from JNU. Why are you working on this area? Don't you know who are these women? This was not only the voice of the Bhadralo, this was also the voice of the Bengali middle class in the 20th century, when they were women editors of progressive journals and all. They were telling, they were actually telling their co-sisters and all, please do not go to theater. Don't spend your time. You should be giving more time for the national cause. And going for theater will be against the national cause. So it's something which is, it cuts across this unsettling of suspicion. It cuts across all caste, all class, all religion. I mean, as I told in when I was staying in one of the villages for my interview on Tamasha in Maharashtra, it was a Dalit community. And she said that, in my Dalit community, we don't marry if, with the other Dalit community whose women are in performance. I mean, they may be part of the Tamasha or Sangeet Pari or Lavani, So the kind of discourse that was building around, I mean, this discourse of the so-called modernity, the cultural modernity, the Bhadralo, which a lot of work by Partha Chatterjee, Tanika Sarkar, Uma Chakravarti and all, the construction of the ideal women vis-a-vis the other women. So that in this kind of a discourse, you cannot find, it's not easy. Women should not be taken for performance for any kind of, especially the middle class women, for any kind of consumption. So you find a very interesting phase in the history of performance of the female impersonator. They were doing the women's roles, Tripatra, they were called female. A lot of work has been done. And a lot of sexuality right movements in the contemporary are trying to retrieve and reclaim their voice, that history to bring it into their sexuality right movements, But it's very interesting. But if you look, the two main icon of that era was, Bal Gandharv. And if you go to Maharashtra, you have a Bal Gandharv theatre halls and all, Bal Gandharv. And another icon of Gujarat was Jai Shankar Sundari. Now, Sundari was not his surname. Sundari was a character of women that Jai Shankar did, and that he became known because of his performance of that women role. And Bal Gandharv, if you look at the literature on Bal Gandharv's lives and all that, you'll be finding, the middle class, the Kuleen women of Maharashtra, all are trying to ape Bal Gandharv's style of wearing sari, his pan, his bindi, and he went for one of the function for a kumkum ceremony, and a lot of people didn't even realize that he's a man, So this is something, there's a rich history about it. How do we take that history? Now, that's a very contested terrain. It's not a very easy. So the sexuality right movement would like to retrieve and reclaim. But if you look at their autobiographies, if you look at their biographies, they are calling themselves straight men. They're not calling themselves, they don't call themselves like, female impersonator, the sexuality, and they don't belong. So another thing is, do we see them as representing a feminine body more feminine than what the women what the women themselves perceive of their body? So it's a fighter, and so this becomes a very interesting terrain. But what's very significant is, but for a very long time, when as we are moving towards modern theater with these these important personalities, that's also a time when we are building up a nation in the making. We're moving towards independence. Now, nation the making itself is a very contested with vis-a-vis European power, your imperial power, who wants to basically say that you're effeminate. The colonies are effeminate, and we are there. We are your barbaric, effeminacy, no masculinity. So we are also countering this whole notion of masculinity vis-a-vis the colonial power. With a lot of work like Mrinalini Sinha and all have brought that into aspect. So how now the real tension is that if we start projecting, men as women, the fear around their masculinity, so they should not be performing any. There should be real women to perform real women's role. And also very interesting, Begum Barve and all these plays are there. It's very interesting. Who are these female? Many times, Bal Gandharva, Jayashankar Sundari may be an icon, but the most of the female impersonators came from a very lower caste background. So the whole caste, the whole masculinity, femininity, femininity vis-a-vis the European, so all, and that's the time also when you find in the European world also are moving towards realistic theater, where the realism, where the women should be performing the men's role. And since we are claiming, because the anti-colonial war was not, it was not just economic nationalism, it was also a contest over your culture. So they also wanted to claim that we have our own culture. We have a rich tradition of our own culture. So women should be coming to perform women's role. What is very significant, if anybody of you are interested in the female impersonation, I was just looking at it and suddenly it struck me. There exist in history rich traditions of many, in the 19th century, all women theater groups. We have actresses like Binodini all performing men's role. But why is not any literature written on women performing men's role? Most of the literature have been on men performing. So that's an interesting dimension. If any of you would like to work upon it, and these they were praised highly for, these women were praised highly for performing. And where is the, in the arts world? So because of this, and interestingly, another tension was not only, it was homoeroticism. They felt if men are performing women's role, it may encourage the homoeroticism, which may be something like, corrupt the society. So women should be coming to perform. Now, if you have late 19th century, early 20th century in Maharashtra and Bengal, the voices started coming from the theater that the women should come to perform. But no, good women cannot, Kuleen women cannot, Bhadra Mahila cannot, because they can, even for the art's sake, they cannot, you cannot lose your morality of your women. So obviously, okay, if it is so necessary, very clearly in all the theater journals, it's written, let the barang, this prostitutes, Vaishya, let them perform. That we can, not married women. And very interesting, I don't want to touch upon the debate around prostitutes which was happening, but it becomes an entry point also to enter the debate around prostitute, because the notion of the prostitute and why should they be brought if it is required for women. Okay, they have a lot of emotions, they can really play, they वो खेलते हैं अपने emotions के साथ. नाटक क्या होता है, emotion के साथ खेला जाता है, and they are expert at it. And the middle class was trying to project by giving them a chance. Maybe they will be, they will be reformed. They will maybe uplifted. We can rehabilitate them. But at the same time, there was a voice. How can you force somebody whose sin is in the blood? How can you reform? They cannot be made a saint. But what to do if it's required? Maybe by doing some good plays they can. So this is a whole rich debate which is happening, converging around the discourse around prostitutes. So you find the entry of the first generation in the so-called elite cultural domain, the women as an actresses. And who are these women? You'll never find about them. Where are they? You just get a word called they are coming from the loose quarters, forbidden streets. What you find in Europe, that's also a time when working class and the discourse around prostitute was going. Across all the modern cities which was forming, you'll find the working class and the area of the prostitutes and all converge. So they felt that whoever is coming from that area, their mothers maybe they may be prostitute. But what is very interesting, a lot of prostitute, even Sudipto Banerjee has written a book, Prostitute Actress. I really had a problem because prostitute actress, how can you title it? It is not something a caste that if your mother is a prostitute and this daughter will also be called a prostitute. But actually, they call anybody entering from those quarters as prostitute. But what about if you look at there, I mean, unfortunately, very little sources are written, voices are there in our history writing. Subaltern voices, also women's voices, and especially these women's voices, you'll hardly find. Some works like, women's writing by Susie Tharu and all are trying to bring some of these women's voices. And one of the interesting autobiography which has become part of the course across the Delhi University and JNU and other is Nati Vinodni's autobiography. I mean, if you look at these women's thing, you'll find they are one of the best performers of their era. The theatre journals across the world are quoting Natya Samagri and all that. But if you look at Nati Vinodni's biography, her voice, it's full of pain, humiliation, betrayal, yearning for respect. It's a way of taking their cultural labor, the elite middle class, and using it for your culture. Simultaneously, their lives, they are exploited, with no respect. And, at this, very interestingly, one thing which comes across is, and theatre could not have reached such a height without these women, which all the theatre journals are talking about. But in their social life, in their everyday life, they have no dignity. And an actress like Nati Vinodni, on whose on acting the theatre dependent, that was also an era, very interesting. Theatre is an era which is still struggling. That's why a lot of people are entering the Bollywood, because finance, how do you generate finance for a good theatre? It's not very easy to get finances and all that. It was a time in Calcutta, you'll be finding Marwaris, dwellers, Johris and all are, giving them money, giving them theatre hall. So these business class who have nothing to do, because they're using it as a commercial venture. So they have to pay a lot for the theatre hall to perform. And Nati Vinodni was basically persuaded by one of her only, theatre colleagues, men colleagues. Oh, Nati, if we get a theatre hall, a lot of our money will be saved. And this man wants to make you a mistress. And it's very interesting. That's the time in Bengal, a lot of these zamindars, squares, it's a tradition. Also in today, you'll find industrialists marrying actresses. I don't know. I mean, what is the notion of that? So it was Bagan Bari. Then you marry them, you keep them. That's what Bhumika in the film Smita Patil, it is in one person marries. So she's been told, and it's not that, they may not be married women, they may have unconventional sexual life, but they had their choice. That if it only said that, look, I'm not interested in that man, but she loved theatre and wanted to do something for the theatre commune. And they said, if you stay with this man, he'll give you money and we can build a theatre. And this man, actually, Gurumukh Rai, it is there in a biography, he tells her, Nati, I'm giving you this money. Why do you want to give it to the theatre? You keep it to yourself. She says, no, I've entered into this relationship for the theatre. I won't keep it. And Nati, only thing was promised to Nati Vinodini that this theatre hall will be named after you by this theatre commune of middle class. But when the theatre hall got named, it was called Star Theatre. It still there exists in Calcutta National and Star Theatre. And then it was said, how could we name the theatre hall after a prostitute? So these were the trials, tribulations, their emotional exploitations these actresses went through. And for a very long time, don't think that the history of middle class women entering theatre is a very late history. You'll find no Bhadra Mahila ever or a respectable woman. If you find the first generation of film actresses, if first generation, if you look at you'll find none of the middle class women are acting in the cinemas. The first generation is always so. Or who enters like Durga? We get an example of a Durga Khote. If you look at her husband passes away, and obviously she has no other choice but to earn. And theatre is looking for women, for respectable women. That's how Durga Khote enters. So once the entry of the middle class starts gradually, not before first decade of so much independence, there's another very anxiety around now. The middle class Bhadra Mahila, Kuleen women are entering. What happens? They will be spending long hours in the theatre hall. They'll be doing the role with other men. They will be, smoking. They will be dressing fashionably. They will be drinking. How can what will the construction of what happens to the construction of the Bhadralok community? And one of the visuals which I'll show you is the one of the play which got made in Maharashtra when Durga Khote and all, or some middle class women, Sulochana and all, started entering theatre. This is the whole anxiety. This whole play script is around the anxiety and the testing of that middle class women. So it's very significant is I want to bring out that first time actually in the colonial period when the middle class women did perform was in the political theatre. They came in the IPTA. That was because of the political journey. That was because of the political commune that, if you look at my work and other work, they could transgress this patriarchal kind of a boundary. Again, once the post-independence, first decade, second decade, once the women enters, middle class women enters, what you find is the place which belonged to these subaltern actresses, that they were removed totally. And I don't think anybody from their families or anybody from Tamasha, anybody from Nautanki ever is part of any of the Bollywood films these days. So one of the narrative is the struggle, the obstacles, the struggle, women's artistic agencies being denied by not allowing them to enter. Another very significant is it's not that we had a rich tradition of women dancing and performing communities like Devadasis and Tawayas, courtesans. What happens to them? The kind, it's another narrative that they're displaced totally, because what is happening is, that's the era when you're building up the Bhadra Mahila discourse of the late 19th, early 20th century, anti-notch campaign, anti-notch act, so how these Devadasis and courtesans are no, they are not supposed to perform, and you're trying to criminalize them. You're trying to redefine their creative space and bringing them under the colonial rule during the Contagious Act, bringing them 1857 revolt is showing that your Mangal Pandey's films and all are showing that you are bringing them under the umbrella of a prostitute, the Tawaiffs and all these. But, if you just deconstruct that, this is something which I feel very fascinated because of the Muslim women's question. That's very pertinent to me. When you deconstruct, actually what you find, what do you want to show as your cultural heritage? You want to show Bharatanatyam, you want to show Kathak, you want to show Hindustani, you want to show Carnatic music. Who are the people? Devadasis of Carnatic music, Bharatanatyam, their Sadir form, taken away by the upper caste women like Rukmini Dev, Arunjali, and then later, it becomes, you have a Kathak, which is again the Tawaiffs, Bathaks, and the court of, Nawab Wajid Shah, which whom you want to degrade in your history. it is them who has given you, these cultures. But actually, very interestingly, as you know, you in the Devadasi tradition gave you Sadir form, which was actually taken away, redefined as Bharatnatyam, saying it has come from Bharata, divine Bharata, and you're taking away the Kathak also. Now you're saying from the courtesans community, ghazals and thumris and the baijis and all, and you're saying Kathak Vachka. ये कथक वाचका है, ये ब्राह्मण कम्युनिटी के हैं, ये महाभारत के ट्रेडिशन से आए हैं इन लोगों ने. इफ यू एक्चुअली इंटरव्यू दीज मोस्ट ऑफ दीज मेन कथक मेन, दे विल नेवर से, लाइक बिरजू महाराज वगैरह से आप बात कीजिए, उन लोग कभी नहीं कहेंगे कथक का ट्रेडिशन तवाइफ के ट्रेडिशन से आती है. So there's an erasure, what I call a cultural displacement. Why do we just look upon the economic displacement and others development? It is a cultural displacement of the Nati Vinodni generation in your modern so-called theater, reaching it to National School of Drama, to Bollywood, and it's another is this dance and music. I just want to pause for a minute and why this suddenly I saw the whole nation is talking about the Muslim women, the whole stereotype around the Muslim women as a women who are illiterate, backward. Islam says you cannot perform. But when we look at the history of the wives or courtesans, we find a large community of them are Muslims, Muslim women. And they're not only giving you, it wasn't un-Islamic for them. At that time, they were not banned. Number two is they're also very interestingly the first generation of literary women, literary traditions जो आता है. उर्दू का यदि आप लिटरेरी ट्रेडिशंस देखेंगे, आप पाएंगे दाग दहलवी से लेके अहलाबादी वगैरह, जिसको द फेमस whom we all refer to, all sought the companies of these tawayas because they were poet. Malka Jan, Nargis's mother, Gauhar Jan, down to Malika Pukhraj, whose biography, but unfortunately within the Urdu literary domain, these women never got a space because it was considered these. How can you give them a space? Because it is a Kaspi Kanchani ki likha hua hai. They are a whore. Usko how do we? It is actually the women's movement. It is actually which has also given it for retrieving women's voices, rewriting of women's literary traditions. That some of these voices are now coming. I mean, बड़े बड़े उस्ताद भी कहते थे कि जल्दी से जाते थे ट्रेन पे, कहते थे हमारा शायर तभी, हमारे कविता तभी जीवित होगा यदि आप इसे गा देंगे. And now in Hyderabad Mahalakabai, now you're building up a mausoleum. You're talking about she was the first poetess of this country, women poetess, attending Mushaira and all that. All these, and interestingly, not only, we are actually, they were also in they were very important political subject. Azizan Bai, which I've written on 1857, to Gauhar Jan, who performed a concert for Swaraj Fund, Gandhi ke request pe. But what did Gandhi do? She said, Gandhi ji ko, aap aayega mujhe sunne ke liye, tabhi main perform karungi, I'll give you money for Swaraj Fund. But on the day of performance, Gandhi ji was not there. He sent somebody else. And Gauhar Jan said, only 24,000 was actually collected through that concert in 1921 for the cause of national new movement. And, Gauhar Jan says, Muhammad Ali, गांधी ने अपनी पूरी रखा नहीं बात, मतलब he did not keep his truth, so I'll only give you 12,000. That was the dignity that these women had. I mean, I was looking somewhere, Gangubai Hangal, she actually performed in the Belgaum Congress 19. And one of the fear that if you look at her interview, Gangubai Hangal's fear was कि एक बार मैं concert खत्म होगा, एक बार once I come down, will these people who are watching me will sit with me and eat together as a commune. So this is, and what you find is that when the entire communal rights was taking place, none of these performing communities ever left their country. They all from Dal Mandi and all that, but when there were a lot of attacks. But significantly, I'm happy that this Ali and both Gayatri, you are there. If you look at the writings of the progressive writer like Premchand, कहीं ना कहीं प्रेमचंद का बहुत famous, if you get a chance, all of you get a chance, look at his short story on actress. It is actress. And the another novel is Seva Sadar, which is on courtesans. Somewhere down the line, even the progressive left writings, progressive writers movement, somehow they could never negotiate with the actresses or performers. I mean, this short story of actress, actually, she's such a powerful actress, Tara. One Kuwar Singh of Zamindar class wants to marry her. I mean, though the family says, how can you marry? What happens to the child? So property pe hissa ho jayega. And this is going to actress's child taking. And at least Kuwar Singh was said that he wants to defy. But you know what agency does Premchand gives to actress Tara? He says, this she goes through guilt and says, oh, this Kuwar Singh is ready to sacrifice everything for my sake. How can I deceive him? I do not know. I do not want to marry him. And she leaves everything. She leaves all her ornaments, everything with a letter to Kuwar saying that you should marry. I'm not worthy of marrying. And leaves crosses the Ganga, leaves the profession. Something very similar with the Seva Sadan. It is considered to be a very powerful novel. It is on Tawayav's life, Basically, I mean, he's critiquing, Premchand critiques and says vis-a-vis middle class women and vis-a-vis courtesans, his novel begins कि married women भी तो अपनी sexuality, अपनी sex को बेचती है अपने husband को. That is something which Premchand talks about that time vis-a-vis the Tawayavs, and gives a lot of social positions to Tawai. But in the end, the novel ends with this Tawai feeling guilty of her life and joins the Seva Sadan and leaves her profession. So Gayatri, I'll just wind up in 5 minutes. Interestingly, there's one dimension I just want to touch upon. So we have lots of dimensions. One is resistance, one is the existing traditions, which is getting displaced, and one is the tradition of popular theatre, where you need to bring the question of caste, because I was not bringing in these two. I brought the Muslim women and others. But here, the popular theatre, if you look at, I mean, it's very interesting. I don't know if you come across the regions, you'll find in none of the popular theatres women have entered, except I find in some like Tamasha, Nautanki, and Jatra to some extent. I mean, I don't know why there's so much resistance still of women performing in the popular theatre, which belongs to the pop, which is actually, and these are the two theatre which I'm more familiar with. Jatra, not so much. These Tamasha, Nautanki, I want to pick up because I've worked on it. Obviously, this is a caste-based profession. Very clearly, it comes across as a caste-based profession. Most of the women performers, they come from the Dalit communities called Kolhati, Beria, denotified Dalit, and where singing and dancing like Gulab Bai's biography has been written by Deepti Priya. If you get a chance, very powerful biography on Beria community women. Kolhati, Choda Kolhati ka an autobiography written by a Tamasha woman. I mean, it's worth reading Choda Kolhati ka, because we have a tendency also in the women's movement to romanticize or make a binary between sexual agencies and the freedom, odd versus the exploitation. And the Shailja Paik has now come up with the work on Tamasha women. But most of these women are Dalit, and some of them, their profession in the Brahminical order of Kolhati, Beria, Nat, Kanjari, some of these women cannot marry. And they have to be a bread earner of the family, sexualizing or entertainment, which is part of the community also, a community. And but in my travel to Maharashtra to troops, I saw there were many other Dalit communities also coming. The reason obviously is many of them are coming because of the poverty, and many performers in my interview said if they did not work, either they have to work as a laborer for their living or they have to come for this performance. But what we find is very interestingly, the slide which I'm going to show you, you'll find them getting projected as a national, your root culture and all, in the Republic Day and others. But by and large, the middle class has marginalized these performances, calling it vulgar, women of loose morality. Even the state, which would like orchestrates, you have a lot of, melas, popular, national festivals, where you orchestrate them. Mr. Bharucha has tried to, he's written powerful articles. Basically, you orchestrate them, but the government is not there actually to support or has any policies regarding these performers. These performers, you may be picking, choosing one Gulab Bai to give her an award, but what happens to the rest of the community? They're ignored. Uh, they're losing autonomy, many because they are in the market, they're in the vulnerable forces, whoever is ready to pay whatever they're demanding. They're performing, for example, in Sonpur Mela. I was trying to go to Sonpur Mela once to see this Nautanki gets performed, but my entire family in Bihar said, नहीं, वहाँ लड़कियां नहीं जा सकती हैं. So what is happening? Who are these women? What are their stories? The kind of, so you're totally the to the market forces. So I mean, art needs to be patronized by the state. If you give them to the market, it becomes, so they're turning into musical orchestras or item numbers or cabaret or disco, and many of these, all these women performers of Tamasha and Nautangi told me they do not, they want to perform what is real, what is Lavani, what was Lavani, what was there in the Nautanki, and the kind of the life that they're leading, number of hours, late nights, their backstage, all speaks, I mean, they look very, once they do makeup and all that cheap, they may disguise their faces, but if once the makeup starts over, they may look like any plebeian community. So despite them awarded by, despite being projected. And lastly, just 2 minutes, I mean, anybody who wants to work on women performer, not also for the students of gender or women studies, they become a very important site also, or a vantage point also to revisit the institution of marriage. Most of these women, as I spoke about, Nati Vinodni and these popular women, are not into conventional marriage. Revisit family, they are part of the family, they're supporting their family, entire families female headed. It actually cracks up the domesticity, respectability, because these women are not saddled with domesticity, motherhood, child rearing, traveling to, I mean, they also talk about these experiences, traveling to many places, and the whole notion of man being the bread earner. Most of it is of these communities are the female-headed family. So anyway, just Gayatri, can you just run it, since I run it? It will just not take more than 10 minutes.
Is that visible? Actresses in theater?
Yeah. The first slide. Now, what I said, 1919 May, there was all street Sangeet Mandali in Maharashtra. Why is no study done on this? I mean, what I want to also say, and they were also performing men's role. Number 2, Gayatri, yeah. This is very, all are men. This was the play 1899, Female Impersonators, Sharda play on the age, age of marriage girls, men performing, because they all look like women. If I had not told you, next, this is Bal Gandharv, I mean, this is, he was actually a icon in Maharashtra, very respected. Theatre halls are made by him, and Bal Gandharv ka jo tum paoge, jahan jahan naam has come. Okay. This was something, again, a theatre in Jodhpur, which was performed. This was a man performing a women's role. Next, Gayatri. This is the entrance of Jyotsna Bhole, Now she comes from the so-called respectable family in Maharashtra. And we have another one, Kamla Bai, very famous. A documentary film has also been made. And some next. Now, this is, what I wanted to say. When I said कि पहली बार, middle class के women came to theatre, play was, Kulbadu was actually scripted. And this is something, you'll find the daughter, she's in the theater. These are mother-in-law and her sister-in-law and the father-in-law. And they come and they feel that my son has got married to a actress, I mean, a person who performs the theater. Will she prove to be a good daughter-in-law? And she actually wants to prove. That is how the film Kulabadu, written by a man, tries to say कि नहीं वो तो कर सकती है, वो तो अच्छी सुगृहिणी भी है, नौकरी भी करती है, 9 यार्ड की साड़ी भी पहनती है, ससुर का पैर भी छूती है, no cheap sense of dressing up. Kulabadu is a script is there in the Shanta Gokhale has written this in Maharashtra. Okay, and मतलब she has collected it. This is, when they were saying कि ये जो prostitute actress, will they give up their financial, their blood में sin होता है यो. This woman, she was tortured and tortured. Her mother says, what are you getting in the theater? Why do you, but because she had so much of commitment to theater that she did not want to join anything, These are but unfortunately, nobody has written, their voices are lost in the history. Physical and verbal abuse. Now, this is an era of the social reforms also, because Sukumari Datta was told, sometimes the Bhadra log gets carried away and says, oh, I'll marry, this whole social religious Brahmo Samaj and all. And they marry an actress, and finally he leaves for England, and she's left to again come back to theatre. She's written a literary piece which people claim this is as a next Gayatri Nati Vinod. This is Nati. We can move out of Nati Vinodni. I've told you. Vinodni, when in the middle, just previous Gayatri, she did the role of she did the role of what the famous Ramakrishna, Chaitanya Prabhu. Then only she got recognition by the Bhadralok in Calcutta. Otherwise, till that time she hadn't. Next, Gayatri. This is very interesting. Kamla Bai, she in there's a documentary film by Reena Mohan. She did a role of a man once, and she was chased by a married lady from Rajapur. Next. Gayatri? Next
Yeah,
one.
I think next is the next slide.
Yeah. Now is the popular. Next. This was, I saw it in Shimla. This was Ramlila. ये एक पुरुष था जो कि इसका रोल कर रही थी, कैकेयी का. Next. Now, if you Sang is a form in Haryana, men performing women's role. Next. As I told you, Chapal Bahadur is a very big icon, female impersonator in the Jatra. Like Bal Gandharv is in the modern theatre, elite theatre. Next. But his life, you should read his life. He has not written himself, but a lot of interviews and films have been made about his life. How does one take this female impersonator? It's a very contested debate around them. It's not an easy debate, Okay. His life was full of troubles. This is something in my state, Natwa. शादी ब्याह में अभी भी हम पाते हैं कि हमारे गांव में आते हैं नटवा परफॉर्म करने के लिए. Man performing. Next. This is what I saw in Shimla Ramleela. देखो उनकी, look at the body. These men, both the men, look at the way they are confining the body. We would not have confined. So how do you see men representing women's role? Does it mean that, the femininity, they are defining a femininity? Next. Move out. Next. ना इसके previous कोई बात नहीं. Previous, this was actually NSD did. रंगधूली ने नौटंकी पे किया था त्रिपुरारी शर्मा ने. Next. It's not important. This is what I said, this community of Beria and all that. This is what the caste is. They will be performing in melas and fairs and all that. This is their dance. This was the play which Tripurari Sharma had. This is Gulab Bai, who got an award. And a life history has been written on her by Deepti Priya. Next. is a daughter. This is a daughter performing. Now, if you want to interview her daughter, she is married. She doesn't want to say that she was part of the Nautanki. So you can't meet her. Next. Tamasha. This is what I wanted to come name Tamasha. Now this is Narayan Gaon. वहाँ पे इन लोग सब लगा के रखते हैं. It starts in Dashara time and goes on before the monsoon sets it. And people who wants to have their performances, they pay, give them advance. Uh, this is this woman I had interviewed. Many of these theatre, what is significant is many of these theatre of Tamasha and Nautanki are owned by women. They are the directors, and the companies are known. Like I forgot to give you reference of a film Teesri Kasam. Raj Kapoor ka hai. Next, she's a Dalit. You'll find they are surviving, thriving because of the women. Tamasha is surviving because of the women. Next. Now, very interestingly, this is a Dalit, comes from a Dalit community, Mang, Vittabhai, famous Bangla type. यहाँ पे travel करते पूरे truck के साथ, they come with a truck and then they lay down the tent, and then first thing she does is to perform. She does some not perform religious rituals. उसका अपना एक space है जहाँ पे Bangla type. Next, the religion and them, these are this is actually, if you want to know what is, when I show you the latest slide, this is actually what is Lavani performance in Maharashtra, in Tamasha. Next. They start from the back, then they come to the front, Lavani. Next, back, and then come to the front. And then you have a lot of jokes with them, with the men, these characters. But one interesting dimension in their interview, they will say, they do not appreciate us anymore. They want young girls. There's all division between them because of their survival. They're looking down upon the younger women. They're entering and they're immoral. They're taking away. Next. Now, this is the mother. This is the daughter. There will be a nani. Next, 3 generations I saw them. This is the next. This is Tamasha. Now, next. Now, this is what I showed you those visuals because that was what is Lavani. Now, this is, they will say Tamasha हो रहा है, लेकिन उनकी पूरी की पूरी बॉलीवुड पे जा रही है और इन लोग कहते हैं कि हमारे ऑडियंस भाग जाएंगे यदि हम इनको ये नहीं दिखाएंगे तो फिर हमें पैसा कौन देगा. So next, now this they will call it Tamasha. This is all called Tamasha for them. This is not. This is all influenced by item Cabra. And next Gayatri. Next. This is again next. This is Mahua Nautanki Company in Sonpur. Now, how do they? We lot of time if you ask them, "Aap rehearsals kab karte?" They will smile at the middle class notion. This is हम तो बचपन से देखते हैं, हम उसी को देख के बड़े हुए हैं. Next. The entire family, while she is performing, the mother is performing, the children are sitting. Next. This is Sandesh Bhandare, a friend of mine, gave me some visuals. He's written extensively. The entire family travels with us. Next. Now, this is the backstage. जो हमारा dressing room, elite women may think that's the dressing room, what we find in Kamani and all. This is their dressing room where the children, she may be just feeding her child and going to the stage to perform, immediately coming back, feeding her child. Next. And the men and all are there. This. She's getting dressed up and that son is looking, these are her deep rooms. And this is what they say that, the relationship between theatre artist and audience is limited, but we Tamasha artists live our lives out in the open. We do not get the same prestige because unke dressing room dekhoge, it's like anybody can just come and look at them. Next, Gayatri. Yeah, this is the all men audience. Next. मैन ऑडियंस आई वाज देयर लाइव मैं थी हमको हटा दिया कि मैडम थोड़ा पीछे हट जाइए अब बहुत ज्यादा राउटी होगा लोग throwing money and showing them money. Next. This is the current stage. Next. Backstage, dressing room on liquors. This is their backstage. They are dressing up. The men are there. This is their backstage, their entire family. Because she has a small child, her mother is there. Next. This is their dressing room. This is where they are sleeping, relaxing in the daytime before their performances begin. Now, this is they're traveling in a truck, get down, new place to perform, and this is their daily chores. Next, नहाने का जगह गांव में ढूंढ रहे हैं तमाशा. Next, dinner after performance at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. They all look like a plebeian community. All are tamasha women. And where do they come from? Kulhati, this is the place. This is the next. This is their houses, cheap makeup. Next. Now they start dressing up in the evening. Next. This is the Nani, as I told you, Nani, daughter and daughter, 3 generations. Next. And they do not value us as human beings. When we ask for plain water, they pour it from us. Next. That's. We are in a pitiable stage. Next. Next. Now, last 3, 4. This is how Republic Day. Hold on, Gayatri. This is one of the Republic Day orchestrated this as the culture of Maharashtra. There, you know. Tamasha. Next. 26 जनवरी की शाम को राष्ट्रपति भवन पे आर्टिस्ट के साथ इनकी इंटरैक्शन होती है. Cultural tourism, the way they are using them. Next bus. Okay. Okay, thank you, Gayatri and Dipali. Thank you so much. I did take some more time, but felt like, Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was so intense and so elaborate at the same time. And at this point, if any one of you have any question to ask, you can raise your hand, or you can also drop it in the chat box. Okay, just to start the process, I had a question with respect to scholars have dealt with it, but I thought it will be good to get your perspective on all this. It's about looking at the framing of some of these, at least as a cultures of resistance, and trying to put overlook the conditions in which these emerge in, to just reduce it to the very framing of as a cultures of resistance is something which I thought your perspective on it would really give some value.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to actually clearly, you know, what you find, Gayatri, what is happening is also because, you know, culture as a site of resistance also. In fact, you know, it's very interesting. This whole debate came during the time of Indian People's Theatre, that IPTA, with P.C. Joshi, like many of these who were acting in IPTA women, first generation, they said, you know, Reba Chaudhary, everybody told P.C. Joshi, you know, we are political. आप हमें हर समय क्यों कह रहे हैं कि I mean, आप perform जाओ इसमें इसके through. P.C. Joshi actually at that time said, you know, this is also politics. It's not that, you know, to treat it, because generally what is happening also is, I mean, though we are recognizing even the women's movement, people like Mangai, Uma Chakravarti and all have been raising this point that, you know, women's movement do talk about that, you know, women, if you actually want to retrieve the voices of women, the literate section of women are in minority. But the other women, these women, large number of women are with the oral culture, orality. You have to look at all these things, their songs, dance, all these things. So this is as an important a voice, like Kalpana Mehta from Saheli had once said. There was a cultural festival of feminist groups in Delhi in 1983. She said she wanted to bring that, she wanted to have that festival because she was a very important pioneer of the feminist movement. But she says, look, I'm not a leader. I have my other voices. I want to talk through them. So there is a recognition that it is a site, but unfortunately what happens is, in all left movements, in the women's movement, what you find, you give them a space like at the end, this where which people like theater practitioner like Mangai and all, who belong to both movement and the activist and all, has been raising. Number two is the cultures of one can see them is also by even though tamasha and not especially tamasha and all that, by a lot of the IPTA like Patira Bapu and all that in Maharashtra, they started using this form of IPTA Povai as a, and Sharmila Rege has also written one of article in EPW. Shalda Pike has also written it. I have not read it so much. That now they're trying to retrieve, even the cultural like Sheetal Satya and all, what are they trying to do now? They're trying to reclaim, because actually the rich culture of performance has come from this community itself. So they are trying to, as they are calling themselves Dalit, they are also trying to reclaim this as a resistance. And Gopal Guru and all these people are now saying that their voices can be, a lot of these voices when they have the Ambedkar Sammellans and all this, you have to look at these pamphlets, you have to look at their cassettes, you have to look at their songs. So they're using it. It is now getting, it was being appropriated till the nation in the making. Now they are trying to reappropriate it and bring it to the fore with their own, redefining it, what they look at it. So it's also a rich history of the, you have you have a group theater movement, you have a Janam, Natimanch, we have a women's movement, which has a lot of street theaters, has Bula, all that has been happening. So it becomes, actually culture can become both a site of a counterculture, a site of resistance. That's why it becomes very significant for any nation. Nah? Why do they fight over culture so much? That is what I want. Huh?
Thank you. You can raise your hand or drop in the question in the chat box.
Maybe I have a very small question, because a lot of our audience members are very young students who are also trying to figure out, if, when they or are at a, very initial stage of their research. So, Dr. Singh, if you have to, sort of give some advice to people who are trying to work on theater and women or women performers. So maybe in terms of, doing research, if you had to like give them any one or two quick advices.
Yeah, it's very, I don't know whether the students, it'll be interesting because Dipali, what is interesting is we also homogenize all the regions, इसमें ये भी देख सकते हो, you can look at it also, यदि suppose you're coming from whatever region you are coming, um, you pick up the history, वहाँ की, यदि उनसे जानने की कोशिश भी करो कि कोई भी performance, शायद you may be also having people like in Bihar, suppose I did not get a chance, suppose somebody is coming, नटवा आते हैं आपकी शादी ब्याह में गांव में परफॉर्म करते या वहां करते या कहीं पे, तो वाइट इट्स आल्सो इंटरेस्टिंग कि उनसे पूछने के लिए हाउ डिड दे एंटर, व्हाट वाज देयर, थिंग्स लाइक दैट, इंटरव्यू फॉर द कंटेम्प्रेरी हिस्ट्री के लिए तो तुम्हें कुछ सेकेंडरी किताबें जो महिलाएं हैं उसको देखने की आवश्यकता होगी, यदि यूपी में काम कर रहे हो तो थोड़ी सी उनकी नरेटिव लाइक गुलाब बाई वगैरह की, दीप्ति प्रिया ने लिखा है कि काफी, और ये even I mean you can also talk to your family member around. I mean if you find very popular, especially the popular performance, देखो स्टूडेंट्स को ये कहूंगी कि जो एलीट है, एलीट डांस हो रहा है, जैसे कि आप भरतनाट्यम देख लोगे अपने आप पूरे माँ के साथ परिवार के साथ मेरी क्लास में, लेकिन क्या आपके गांव में यदि इस तरह का कोई हो रहा है या आपके उस जगह पे कोई हो रहा है जहाँ पे ऑडियंस इज नॉट ओनली, तो क्या आप जाना चाहोगे? यदि जाना नहीं चाहोगे तो have a start your dialogue and then start probing, you'll get a rich history in why, and these questions will start unfolding कि क्यों resistance इनको हो रहा है. For example, सोनपुर में मुझे जाने से रोका गया, adult, I mean, I didn't want to defy my maternal family, I didn't want to actually. Sometimes I don't, jana hi jana. I could have gone as an anonymity without letting them know. But to tell them, obviously they had to give me a car and everything, So this is something कि तुम्हें महिलाओं की स्थिति, क्योंकि इसे आप पेशे ask any student यदि वो इस पेशे को, if she wants to, how many of you the students are there, have you ever performed in dramatic society in your colleges? Have you anybody? Is there undergraduate students here?
Yes.
Have you, तुमने
Hello,
Jayashri,
ma'am.
have you performed? Have you ever performed in any of
Yes,
your?
yes, ma'am.
You have
I
performed in the
performed in
dramatic society and
no, ma'am. I performed in theatre department of Pondicherry University. I was doing
hmm,
my master's there in anthropology department. I'm from anthropology background,
hmm,
and I performed there. My friends approached me
hmm.
to perform, so I performed there. And the last performance was Thanda Ghost. You must have heard about this. That is Colder Than Ice. That is an English translation. The women read. So there are like three different stories. They attached it into one story. So there was one character was mine, and is Kulwant Kaur. So she fights with her boyfriend, her lover, that why he wasn't coming to her and why he wasn't treating her the way he was.
Okay,
Yeah.
Jayashri, can I,
And
sorry,
then
just a second. I hate intervening. I just want to know one thing. What I want to actually bring out through this lecture today, uh, uh, not the play that you did and what was the storyline. I would like to ask you your journey in the theater as a woman while
yes, ma'am.
not doing, and in case you want to make it as your profession and take it up. And from their journey to theater, if you want to come to the cinema. That I wanted to
No,
know, that is the patriarchal resistance. I wanted to know. I mean, क्या उसका opposition?
yeah.
हाँ, हाँ.
So
That is what
so
Jayashri.
yeah, ma'am, the character I was playing, I got
हाँ,
a lot of resistance from the department faculties,
okay.
from that department itself.
हाँ,
Because the character was bold and there are a few intimate scenes. They
हाँ,
censored it on that day. They need to review it as well. So I couldn't perform it the way we had prepared. So that was the restriction we faced. And taking that further and getting into cinema or any theater thing, I do not have a background, professional background or anything. I did not learn it. So it was just the restriction I faced at that time, uh, which I knew that there was a female faculty. So he restricted, and he is from theater background. And I couldn't even ask because I was not from theater background. So, and not even from that department. So why did you are an artist, and why couldn't you understand art form, the character? It was just,
okay, good. That's interesting dimension because it happened in my dramatic society, because they said Sanskrit play में ये नहीं होता लता, तुमने कैसे करा दिया. That's interesting. You know what is, Jaishu, very interestingly that you are, as a student in the academic world, you are picking up a play and you're performing in your universities and all that. That has been really accepted by the British Padre. You know what happens to many of the students? Their journey begins from there, of resisting. Some of the students, they get caught up in this so get infection, because performance is an infection. And I remember very well that Shubha Mudgal had come to our college to speak once, and she said, I was not one of the best singer of my time. There were many other with me. Where did their voices get lost? Why did not they come? So somebody who gets infected may resist, may take it upon, but large community of the students, they say they give it up after some time. This is nahi ma'am, uske baad hum shaadi wadi ho jayegi, ye ho jayegi. that is what when we जब देखते हैं ना कि हम patriarchal society की resistance इतनी strong क्यों होती है, and why do you say you are, Jayashri, you are not from, none of us, none of the people are professional. It is always a training. Performance has to come through training, na? So why do others not go for training? Because they don't consider it. You can consider teaching and others, doctors and all, but still in this field. So what's happening is in the world of cinema, the families of the cinema, mostly are coming. Now the new, तुम पाओगे कि सिनेमा में 1940s में पहले थे ही नहीं, कौन थे पहले बाईजीज वगैरह परफॉर्म कर रहे थे, नरगिसेस मादा मलका जान वगैरह, then once the middle class came, then they started performing, but unke bacche, so now the people who knows they cannot, even the middle class families, Bollywood is a big struggle for a lot of the women also now, so that's another battle. So this is what I wanted, the kind of resistance and the journeys that, if you come from the theater family, kind of like, Usha Ganguly and all will not talk about their resistance, but they did talk about women not becoming part of their troupe. रेखा जैन ने कहा कि जब वो कानपुर में जाती थी और कहती थी कि मैं एक अच्छी नाटक करना चाहती हूँ, एकता के साथ हूँ. She used to say कि मैं घरों में रेखा जैन is famous, national कीर्ति जैन national school of drama में उनकी बेटी थी director, and her husband was a very important person, the theater world. She says कि मैं रिक्शा में लेके भद्र रिस्पेक्टेबल फैमिली में कानपुर में बच्चों को लाके प्रैक्टिस करवा के फिर उनको ड्रॉप कर. So this is something, this, ये resistance क्यों? I mean, so it may be taken as a passion. It may be taken, I mean, nowadays it's in the CV, na? When you marital में जाओगे, ये CV में तुम डाल देते हो. But will any family will accept a daughter-in-law after marriage, and you say, now I want to change this profession? You may be allowed to change other professions, but not this profession. So kya डर है? I mean, that is what that is. But that's very significant, Jayashri, you said was that, women, even the content, that's why censorship has come. Na? अब तो सभी चीज censorship में है. और फिलहाल तो हम कोई भी नाटक करेंगे तो सब दिखाना ही होगा हमें, इस नाटक में आप क्या दिखा रहे. That is a kind of surveillance across the nation.
Thank you so much. And do we have any other question or comment?
बच्चे, हाँ. इसमें से दीपाली, तुम्हारे कोई भी स्टूडेंट?
Many students, yes, I can see some of my students here. There is
They are doing paper
Simran,
on gender?
not this semester. They're all first semester students. Perhaps later on, they will, yeah.
But I hope, if this was the first, I hope समझ में आया. अंकिता,
Yes.
जो मैं बोल रही थी वो समझ में आया, अंकिता?
यस मैम, समझ में आया. मैम, मेरा एक क्वेश्चन भी था.
हाँ, बोलो.
मैम, is there any provision to monopolize the culture of this community or protect the rights of this community?
In community?
मैम, जो भी कम्युनिटी आपने बताया,
नहीं, मैं
जो नौटंकी,
जैसे ट्रू बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट क्वेश्चन है, क्योंकि जो तुमने हमें बोला कि जो अंकिता ना, हाँ अंकिता ये बोला, जवाब ये बात सच है कि आपने इसे तो आप अपनी धरोहर मान रहे हैं, कल्चरल हेरिटेज मान रहे हैं, इसी को आप शोकेस भी कर रहे हैं. समटाइम्स दे ट्रैवल टू अमेरिका वन, लेकिन जो लार्ज नंबर ऑफ कम्युनिटीज हैं जो आपको दिया है, इनफैक्ट some attempts have been made because if the state, आपके state government belongs to whom? यदि आप राज्य, state को कौन represent करता है? State को elite जो ये मध्यम वर्ग upper class ही represent करता है. So obviously state in that sense वन वुड लाइक, क्योंकि आर्ट को हमेशा हम मान के चलते हैं कि आर्ट को मत छोड़िए, मार्केट बाजार के लिए मत छोड़िए, फिर वो कला नहीं रह जाएगा आपका, मतलब वो जो करना भी चाहते हैं कलाकार जिनका है। तो कुछ अटेम्प्ट बेड़िया कम्युनिटी के कानपुर वगैरह में यूनियनाइज करने की, वन ऑफ द यूनियनाइज करने की कोशिश हुआ। कुछ अटेम्प्ट महाराष्ट्र में तमाशा के अंदर भी हुआ, लेकिन उनके अंदर भी काफी इंटरेस्टिंग है, तुमने ये सवाल उठाया कि ये दलित आंदोलन में काफी इस पे चर्चा हो रहा था, क्योंकि जो आप इस उनको उनका मानना है दलित आंदोलन का, मैं शायद इसको लाना चाह रही थी, भूल गई कि ये जब इन कौन थे ज्यादा बेड़िया, कौन थे नट, कंजरी या कुल्हाटी, ये कम्युनिटी डिनोटिफाइड दलित थे, और उनको आप जाति के आधार पे कहेंगे कि आप शादी नहीं कर, ब्राह्मणिकल ऑर्डर में आप कहेंगे आप शादी नहीं, आपकी लड़कियां शादी नहीं कर सकती। और चूंकि इन कम्युनिटी में लोगों के पास नौकरी नहीं है, उनको भी ठीक लग रहा है कि चलो मैं ये कम से कम कमा के ये ला रही है। अंबेडकर ने उस वक्त कहा था कि ये जाति, क्योंकि आपने वर्षों से उन्हें जाति रखा है, वंचित रखा है आपने, उनको लैंड नहीं है, उनके पास कुछ नहीं है, तो ये आर्ट तो रहे हैं। अंबेडकर ने क्या, अंबेडकर को आंदोलन में उन्होंने आए थे तमाशा के पठेर बापू पावला तमाशा महिला पहली पर, कि मैं आपके आंदोलन में पैसा देना चाहती हूँ। अंबेडकर उसमें पैसे की आंदोलन के लिए उन्हें चाहिए था, उन्होंने साफ इसे इनकार किया, कहा कि नहीं, ये पैसे आपने एक जाति प्रथा के आधार पे, जाति प्रथा में जहां पे आपने लिखा हुआ है, ये डिवीजन ऑफ लेबर की बात सिर्फ नहीं, आपने सेक्सुअल डिवीजन, ये महिलाएं शादी नहीं कर सकती है लेकिन ये किसी पुरुष के साथ रह सकती है, वो है ना, तो आपने ये प्रथा जाति प्रथा के द्वारा बनाया है, तो ये जो हमारी महिलाएं इतनी क्यों हैं, मैं आपसे ये पैसे किसी हालत में नहीं, ये अभी भी डिबेट में है। और जब भी इसके ऊपर डिबेट आती है, बार गर्ल्स जो बॉम्बे में है, क्या बैन करना चाहिए नहीं करना चाहिए, उसमें आप पाएंगे दलित आंदोलन में आवाजें दो तरह की उठी, बहुत तरह की उठी हैं। कुछ कहते हैं ये हमारी जाति प्रथा के विरोध में है, हमें ये पेशा, लेकिन सवाल ये है कि जहाँ इतनी बेरोजगारी गरीबी है कि ये महिलाएं बहुत लार्ज नंबर में आती हैं, मेन कमाने वाली औरतें हैं, परिवार पूरे परिवार को देखते, 20-20, 30-30, 40-40 लोगों को, अपने ही परिवार नहीं, मौसी को भी, इसको भी, उसको, सबको गुलाब बाई देखोगे। तो अब यूनियनाइज करने की कोशिश है, लेकिन उसमें भी वो सफल नहीं हो पा रहे हैं। उनके अंदर भी एक अजीब तरह की आ गई है कि यंग लड़कियां आती हैं तो तभी होंगी यदि ये एक तो इसे इसे लार्जर मूवमेंट देखे, दलित मूवमेंट इसको टेकअप नहीं कर रहा है, दलित मूवमेंट रादर कह रही है हमारे ब्राह्मणिकल ऑर्डर का है, इनके अंदर से जैसे बार गर्ल्स का यूनियनाइजेशन वगैरह हो रहा था, उसी तरह से यूनियनाइजेशन यदि हो, लेकिन उन्हें सपोर्ट तो चाहिए। तो ये जो है ये, और धीरे धीरे करके ये संघर्ष उनका बहुत ही आसान नहीं है, और धीरे धीरे खत्म भी हो रहा है। ये एक महाराष्ट्र ही है जहाँ पे तमाशा तुम पाओगे, या यात्रा जो बंगाल में है उसमें तो दलित नहीं है, यात्रा में तो दलित कम्युनिटी की महिलाएं उतना नहीं है। नौटंकी एक तरह से समझो कि यूपी का जो नौटंकी है वो एक तरह से खत्म ही हो चुका है, बहुत कम है अब। कभी कभी नेशनल स्कूल ऑफ ड्रामा में या सोनपुर मेले में, इट्स कॉल्ड नाचनी, उसको नाचनी ही कहते हैं। और सबा दीवान ने 2 फिल्म बनाई है उसी नौटंकी पे, नाच उसका देखना, वो पूरा सोनपुर मेले पे ही है। तो जो अभी जीवंत है वो ये कम्युनिटी, और यार राजस्थान में जो जीवंत है, हमने ये देखा कि ये जो हमारे कंजूरी है ना, क्योंकि आपका टूरिज्म इंडस्ट्री बहुत है, तो टूरिज्म इंडस्ट्री में आप जाइएगा तो आप पाइएगा कि वो टूरिज्म का पैकेज है कि आप कहीं घूमने जाते हैं, आपको ना शाम को ये कल्चरल शो देखते हैं, वहां पे आपको फिर कल्चरल शो ये कंजूरीज वगैरह करते, तो उनके माध्यम से आप पाएंगे कि उनका कुछ सब इनकम हो रहा है। तो ग्रेजुअली बहुत सारी महिलाएं वर्किंग क्लास से थी, घरों में घरेलू काम करती थी, घरों में लोगों के घरों में आई इस पेशे में, उनको लगा कि चलो इस पेशे में थोड़ी तो रिकग्निशन है, कुछ समय के लिए स्टेज पे तो हम रिकग्नाइज होते हैं, कुछ क्षण के लिए तो हम अपने रोल को एंजॉय करते हैं। फिर वो वापस, तो ये जो एक क्लास है ना, ये कंस्ट्रक्शन, ये जो क्लास है, एक ऐसा नहीं है कि नीट है, फिर ये दूसरे पेशे में भी चले जाए। उसके बाद फिर ये सेक्स वर्क की तरफ भी जा रहे हैं, बिकॉज बहुत सारे कम्युनिटीज हाईवे वगैरह पे तुम देखोगे, महाराष्ट्र वगैरह के हाईवे वगैरह पे देखोगे तो जाएंगे। तो और कुछ एनजीओ जो है, बेड़िया कम्युनिटी का एनजीओ में तो पूरा कुछ एनजीओ के कुछ लोग हैं, उन लोग कहते हैं हम नहीं चाहते हमारी बेड़िया कम्युनिटी की महिलाएं इसमें आए। उनका बेड़िया कम्युनिटी के पुरुषों से लड़ाई हो रही है कि बेड़िया कम्युनिटी के पुरुष चाहते हैं कि उनकी लड़कियां ये करें, लेकिन ये नहीं चाहते हैं। तो एक महिला से मेरी तमाशा की एक महिला ने कहा था कि मैं तो इसमें आना नहीं चाहती थी, मेरे परिवार ने ढकेला, अब जब परिवार ने ढकेला तो मैं जो कमाती हूँ वो मेरा है, मैं क्यों दूं उस परिवार को। तो उसके परिवार ने पंचायत में इस मामले को ले आया, कोल्हार की पंचायत में सब पंचायत को लगा कि एक लड़की उठ गई कहेगी ये मेरी अर्निंग है, मैं नहीं दूंगी, तो सारे सारे परिवारों की लड़कियां अब कहेंगी कि ये सब मेरी अर्निंग है। तो काफी जटिल है चीजें ना अंकिता, काफी जटिल रूप में है। इसे देखो, सेक्स वर्कर्स मूवमेंट वगैरह का आंदोलन थोड़ा रहा, मतलब सक्सेसफुल रहा टू सम एक्सटेंट। तो मीना शेषु वगैरह महाराष्ट्र में है, उनका यूनियनाइज करने की कोशिश, या महिला आंदोलन ने भी उनको उठाया ना। इनको तो हमारी महिला आंदोलन ने सवाल ही नहीं उठा रहे ना इन महिलाओं के ऊपर। बार गर्ल्स पे तो उठाया था, बार गर्ल्स पे तो महिला आंदोलन ने ही पहली बार उठाए थे, नहीं नहीं आप इसको बैन मत कीजिए, लेकिन उसके अंदर भी बहुत तरह की पोजीशन आई। लेफ्ट के वुमेन्स ग्रुप, लेफ्ट का अलग पोजीशन था, सोशलिस्ट महिला ग्रुप का अलग पोजीशन था, कुछ स्वतंत्र महिला ऑटोनमस महिला ग्रुप का अलग पोजीशन था, दलित एक्टिविस्ट का अलग पोजीशन था। तो इसे एक तरह का यूनियनाइजेशन, जैसे किसी भी और वर्किंग क्लास को तुम यूनियनाइज कर सकते हो, किसी फैक्ट्री में महिलाएं काम करी या लेदर वर्क में काम करी तो उनको यूनियनाइज करना, फिर किसी की नई मोरालिटी वगैरह नहीं आती, मोरालिटी कास्ट नहीं आता, इसमें काफी कॉन्टेस्ट आ जाता है। तो इम्पोर्टेंट क्वेश्चन बट काफी जटिल भी है इसका आंसर।
Thank you so
Oh,
Thank
much,
you very
ma'am. Unfortunately, we have to wind up now. If there are any more questions, please feel free to mail or like reach out to you over a mail, or like would that be okay with you? Uh,
Yeah, I think
Dr. Singh?
yeah, maybe if the audience members have more questions, they can email it to Doing Sociology, and I can send it across to our speaker. So yeah, Gayatri, any final words?
No, thank you. This was like a very engaging session for me. Over to you, Deepak.
Okay, so thank you, and a big thank you to Dr. Lata Singh and Dr. Gayatri Balu, who joined us today. And the lecture by Dr. Singh was, I mean, so insightful, and I'm sure all our audience members have taken a lot from it. And like I mentioned earlier, that this is the first lecture in our series on women and society. So we hope to have more conversations like this. And I think today's discussion gives us also, especially to the audience members, a lot of new ideas, and to take, to carry on research and work on women performers. So thank you so much, Dr. Singh, for agreeing to. And you'd mentioned that you had not been giving lectures for the past 2 years. So I think it was a privilege that you agreed to doing sociology. So thank you so much, and thank you, Gayatri.
Anyway, if there any of them, Dipali, any of the students wants to, they can email you, and then they can. It's interesting
Great.
because I want the regional richness also. ना अपने अपने region से ही करेंगे काम तो काफी diverse voices भी आएंगे.
बिल्कुल. So अपने regions में के जो है
यदि
मतलब
एक
आर्ट फॉर्म से
डॉक्यूमेंटेशन करा सकते हो, डॉक्यूमेंटेशन भी करा सकते हो, फील्ड वर्क पे भी लेके जा सकते हो, सोशियोलॉजी कर रहे हो तो एक फील्ड वर्क भी कर सकते हो, थोड़ा डॉक्यूमेंटेशन भी करा, उसके बाद ओपन अप द डिबेट.
Absolutely. So thank you to our guests today, and thank you to all the participants for joining us, and wish you all a good evening ahead. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Deepa.
you. Thank you so